This week we're going to be talking about Genesis 19, and it's all about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Let's just read the first 3 verses here. And this is where Lot convinces some angelic visitors to stay at his place. Now the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. When he saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, "Hear now, lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way." And they said, no, we'll spend the night in the open square. But he insisted strongly. So they turned into him and they entered his house. Then he made a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Now, there's a number of things here. There's these 2 guys. These 2 visitors, 2 of the 3 guys, 3 people who had visited Abraham in the last chapter that we looked at. And the Lord continued their conversation, and the 2 angels went further on and they arrived at Sodom. For the first time, they are identified as angelic beings who accompanied the Lord when he visited Abraham at Mamre. We have no reason to believe that Lot knew that these guys were angelic. To him, they probably just seemed like really distinguished guests with an air of righteousness or an air of high morality or something around them. On the same thinking, though, Abraham may have known that they were angels. The text just doesn't say one way or the other. But we do notice that it says that Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. There's a steady progression of compromise in Lot's life. He went to looking towards Sodom when he took the land that him and Abraham had shared up, to pitching his tent towards Sodom not long after that, and then losing everything when Sodom was attacked. In other words, he lived there. And now, back at the infamous city, Lot sits in the gate, and this is an indication that he probably is a civic leader of the place now. It's an interesting progression, isn't it? You see, the gate area of an ancient city was where it was kind of like the town hall, where the important men of the city judged disputes and conferred with each other about different affairs. And they supervised those who entered and left the city. But you notice in this particular passage, he insists strongly that they come and stay at his place. So they turned in and they entered his house. Hospitality Lot offered to the visitors was not unusual. This was actually expected. But the urgency with which he offered it was definitely different. Next, we're going to see the real wickedness of why Sodom gets its reputation. It says in verse 4 and 5, "Now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house, and they came to Lot and said, 'Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so we may know them carnally.'" Wow. It's a bit blunt, isn't it? "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us." These citizens of Sodom clearly want to abuse and rape these 2 visitors. They were willing to break all of the principles of hospitality and safety and morality for their own violent and sexual gratification. It really doesn't matter what gender these angels were depicted as. The men of the town wanted to take advantage of them, to rape them, basically. And sin is a funny thing. It seems to take away all the concepts of what is right and wrong. You see, the men of the city, both old and young, all of the people from every quarter surrounded the house. This is an entire city that is given over to violence and immorality. And this behavior, well, it wasn't unusual for them, but totally accepted among the men of Sodom, or among the people of Sodom. It's different, isn't it? In Ezekiel 16, God later condemned and rebuked the great sin of Judah in the later days of the divided monarchy. He compared Jerusalem to the ancient city of Sodom, saying they were like sisters. Then God compared the sins of Sodom to the sins of Jerusalem at that particular time. Look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. She and her daughter had pride, fullness of food, and abundance of idleness. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy, and they were haughty and committed abomination before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw fit. In other words, it's saying there that God punished the people, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that later. The point of the Ezekiel passage was not to say that only the sins of Sodom made them the targets of judgment. There were also the sins of pride and idleness and injustice to the poor, as well as the sexual sins that are included. You see, those sins are all packed together, and Ezekiel's saying, hey, Jerusalem, you're just like them. The Genesis text makes it plain that God was also grieved by their sexual violence and immorality, which is probably why it's included in the Ezekiel list of sins under the words committed abomination.